Welcome back everyone to theCUBE here at the New York Stock Exchange. Our new studio on the East Coast, of course, we got our Palo Alto studio connecting Wall Street and Silicon Valley. This AI Factory Series is really featuring the leaders who are making things happen to build out the infrastructure and also the agentic layer and ultimately the road to physical AI, which is where the NVIDIA and all the AI that's brought to the table have impact. We got two great CUBE alumni here. We got Satish, Vice President, Innovation Ecosystem Officer CTO at Dell. Satish, great to see you.
See you, John.
Sri, co-founder and CEO of H2O AI. Great to have you on too.
Fantastic to be here, thank you.
We've been together on some CUBE interviews in the past. I mean, really, I think 2 cycles now, I'd say, of IT. This AI cycle is pretty significant. Dell has ecosystem of partners developing. You've been pioneering on the AI side for how many years now? How long has it been?
14.
So, the perfect storm has arrived. The AI infrastructure is being built out. The AI factories really are changing the game because it's still infrastructure, but it's tokens. Sri, talk about the partnership with Dell because you guys are cutting into some new turf here with your solution. Talk about the partnership with Dell.
You are crushing it together. Our customers are super excited. One of the biggest turning points that we're beginning to see is ROI from generative AI through agentic AI. And the agentic AI needs a lot of large models, and you can't necessarily send all of your prompts to the public clouds. So that's where Dell and H2O have partnered very closely. We brought sovereign AI for air-gapped in regulated industries, where we can absolutely give the same power that you would otherwise get with large language models in the public clouds, completely on-prem and on your private data and public data.
Satish, in the past year, you've been working hard. We've been covering some of the work you've done in the ecosystem. There's a new partnership kind of ecosystem developing. I was watching Jensen on stage recently in DC at his event he had, as kind of mini halftime GTC report. Extreme co-design is one of their philosophies. And you're starting to see the era now where it's beyond just cloud. Cloud's still going to be there, but the on-prem activity is high because that data is going to have its own models for the companies. Sometimes it's very sensitive data, but still you want to use language models. Talk about how that's developing on your side. You're deploying the factories, and now the software stacks and the solutions are coming together where you're starting to see enough value. The models are good enough. I mean, if you go back 7 years ago and said, what does AGI look like, and you look at what we're doing today, you'd say today's AGI. I mean, is that good?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, the data part is the key, right? And we have been a very strong proponent of, doing, like we always said, do AI where the data is. And to what she was mentioning, how H2O is adding value on that to us as well. Is like enterprise value in AI is all about the data, and a lot of the stuff is on-prem. And I think it's important, that's why I think when we work with the likes of H2O, it's important to understand that whatever you deploy, it has to be on where your core asset is in terms of what your intelligence needs are. I mean, one of the things we see a lot of customers, we have around 3,000 plus AI factory customers now. A lot of them are enterprises, and we do see a lot of enterprises now picking and choosing, especially where they want to be able to go solve the problem, right?
Yeah, I know you sell a lot. Dell's doing well with the neoclouds too. They're buying a lot of Dell factories. Sri, I want you to talk about this dynamic because Dell has huge. I talked to Kyle, who runs North America sales for Dell, yesterday here on theCUBE, and Dell has relationships. They're in all the accounts, and now there's new purchases being made with factory. You got to run workloads on these machine systems. What is and by the way, ROI comes up all the time. Get the beachhead, get those use cases. What are you seeing in terms of adoption, those kinds of AI native like deployments where it's model first? How do we deal with the different models? When should I have a proprietary model, not a proprietary model, an on-prem secure model? What's your view on that?
I think, if you go back to what you kind of touched on earlier, what we've always done is we've been obsessed with our customers and working closely with customers. The last mile of AI is about 99 miles, to be honest. And so we've worked really with partners, like super power partner like Dell. We can actually now land in more of the big banks, telcos. Historically, we had a very strong affinity for banking and retail and capital markets as well as business banking. But now we can even go one step further, build vertical solutions, right? Vertical AI, which is in financial crime, in data. Satish touched on data being the gold mine for the fuel for AI. Yeah. And I think that data agents where you can start making the less messy using agentic AI. We pioneered a product called Super Agent, which is like deep research. What this is able to do is actually do a very good planning using large language models and then execute. So it's a very good coding agent. So we converted large business tasks to real code and then tool calling. So this kind of code is a little less of the hallucinations, so you can quickly catch when you run a code, you execute it, and so you trap it early, so you can do a very long chain of thought without kind of losing train. That kind of deep thought is leading to deep research and better results. So our customers are able to get the same power on-prem as they would get in the cloud. Now the on-prem models are open source models, right? If you think about it. So the power of open source is kind of showing up in democratizing agentic AI for everyone. Historically, agentic AI it needs large models, but of course globally, we are getting models from everywhere in the planet at this point, where large language models are now become more and more commodity. So agency is how you actually can leverage value from AI.
I really like how you brought the domain expertise into this, because these vertical models, whatever you want to call them, they're very domain specific. But they're not the end all be all, there's other things going on, and this is where I think the agent piece is going. Right. Satish, because you guys have PowerScale, you got Spectrum X, you got PowerEdge, you got the infrastructure nailed on the factory. Now you got to deploy this, and I want to get both of your reactions, because this is what we're seeing. I want to see if you agree. The agent work being done now is kind of boring work. And that's when I say boring, I put it in quotes, because there's real world workflows that you could actually solve right now. Right. And so the hyped up is, agents, I'm all this kind of tech, shiny object kind of vibe going on, which is not bad, by the way. I love agents. But the trend is people are buckling down on essentially use cases that don't look good on like the flash and the pan, but they're like toil, they're real tasks. They're real work.
At the end of the day, you got to make the business process simple, right? So the technology is there to make your day-to-day workflows simple, streamlined, and drive more productivity. And to your point earlier about agents, I think the way we understand in Dell, and we see some of the enterprises doing, there is a core set of platforms and agentic platforms which everybody will develop on. But we see more and more domain-specific agentic tech, right? So there's a company which will solve, let's say, for example, customer experience problem using agent. There's a company which will solve, financial problem using agents, right? So if you are an enterprise deploying some, agentic tool chain within solving a CFO's problem or solving a supply chain's problem, then you would actually anchor to that. So that's where we see this coming. So when an enterprise says, okay, you have a common agentic thing to solve, but my specific domain I want to solve is a supply chain problem, or my CFOs have some tax and audit issues I need to solve, then we deploy those specific domain specific agents. And they do rely and lean on quite a bit of small language models because they are very domain specific.
So Sri, talk about this factory dynamic, because when asked what's an AI factory, it's just this massive token generating machine system, just more tokens. Tokens are coming fast. Jensen laid out the 3 power law scales, training, inference, and then deep thinking, kind of where the tokens volume goes up. So, if they can pump out the tokens, then you can go to work. Talk about this dynamic, because these agents need to be wired up. They need more tokens. They're going to have more thinking. And it reminds me of like Kubernetes and Linux. When it becomes boring and invisible, you won. And that's why I like this boring kind of quote, because it's not boring when it works. It's actually great when it works. You've just created a work task.
It just becomes
it becomes done.
Out of life,
it becomes exciting, actually.
I think the biggest disruption we are seeing with agentic AI is actually the coding agent, if you will. So software industry, as we know it, AI has actually eaten software. And of course, you've seen the transformation of the hardware industry, before AI, after AI, right? So you're beginning to see that like dramatic change, where you don't need hundreds of thousands of engineers to build like massive code bases, right? So I think that's completely changed. MD files as the new language, right? So that means that now a small number of group of individuals can transform the whole planet with their own like massive organizations. So we're seeing the new AI native orgs, which are kind of like dependent on neo clouds, depending on like the Dell.
They're model first. They're model centric.
Completely, right?
Yeah.
The entire HR processes are AI first with powered by a model. The entire company building is AI native. Now then you see one step like to the companies like the big banks, right? So if they are imitating, they want to be just like they wanted to imitate PayPal and in the early days. Most of my customers like Capital One and big banks wanted to be like the internet native companies. I think now you're seeing the big banks trying to emulate agentic banks. So, but the biggest challenge, as you mentioned earlier.
Don't forget the neobanks that are forming. And there's a whole new layer of banking infrastructure coming.
Absolutely, especially with the changes in crypto. And
so talk about the relationship with Dell, because if you're going to, because what's another trend I want to get, because I think you guys highlight, and I think it's a template, is the relationship between, I'll say software or what you're doing on H2O and the hardware. All the stuff that's down at the kernel software level, I mean, when we talk about HBM memory and how close it can be to the GPU or XPU, you know, you have now subsystems, fabrics. So how are you tuning and managing and leveraging the
Dell AI Factory is an example of that extreme co-design with our partner, right? So to make our customers really successful. So we've rolled out simple, the Dell-validated blueprints, as they call it, and rolled them out to our customers, and then they started playing with contracts. So you said the boring use cases, like things like that, right? Like looking at procurement, right? Sort of, which is not a famous use case. A contact center it was a poster child. What we've done for a large company like AT&T is they were burning through the tokens on public clouds. So we reduced the token cost by token utilization by 10x by actually using a small language model that was fine-tuned on Dell hardware and now hosted on-prem for a large telco. Right? So that kind of take the top 20 successful use cases and then custom purpose-built SLMs, purpose-built agents. That's where the world has moved, where the agents are doing the big brain stuff, but the actual execution of the tool, like a Wikipedia tool, doesn't need to go and burn all of those tokens online.
You know, we took a lot of heat when we predicted 4 years ago small language models. But what you laid out is we're hearing the same thing, is that you can break the system architecture to the tasks, but you're not foreclosing the option to do other model integrations. You're just optimizing the scope of the data and the agents to be in line with the workflow.
The keyword that transformed SLMs before and now is distillation, right? Sort of, and DeepSeek hit that home run, where everybody could now see a distilled, fine-tuned model, a small model could deliver outsized punch. We're beginning to see that with coding, the latest models that came out even this week.
So you see that now as a standard practice?
Absolutely.
And you guys are implementing that on your side?
Yeah, we have a LLM studio, enterprise LLM studio that runs on Dell GPUs to start customizing, taking advantage of the private data that the large banks have, or the large telcos have.
So fine-tuning as a service is something that is now a standard.
It's an agent.
It's an agent.
It's an agent.
And it's always on tuning?
Yeah, they don't call it fine-tuning anymore, but that's basically what it is.
But that's the
well, there are some companies just, I mean, the whole Nemotron class of models are taking Llama models and fine-tuning for different purposes. I think we're doing something very similar where we can like then fine-tune them further for banks' OCR use cases. We have a visual language model that does OCR called Mississippi. Again, runs very simply.
Sri, so I want to ask you a question, since you're you're on top of the Dell systems, the factories. The number one question I get either on theCUBE or off camera is, love AI factories because it really resonates, and the word's becoming standard. People can relate to it. It's a supercomputer, basically. Whether it's a full-on data center or rack stacked up with all kinds of system stuff, it's purpose-built supercomputer. Not purpose-built, but a supercomputer. The question is, what do I run on it? So can you share some successes you've had with Dell? Because no one's ever done this before. I mean, it's kind of like new in the enterprise. I mean, they've done other versions of HPC, high performance computing. Yeah, they've racked and stacked systems, Dell servers over the years, but now they're getting re-architected with the memory architecture for really managing the power. You guys got that, the template and the reference architecture and hardware. But what are companies running on these? What examples can you share of successes?
So sovereign AI is absolutely a must-have. If you're in Singapore, Middle East, right, sort of nation states that absolutely need to keep their data on-prem locally, all the three-letter agencies in the US federal government, right, sort of if you're counting the number of objects that are flying anywhere, right, sort of all of that stuff is absolutely, one superpower that H2O and Dell bring together is we've been, as you've mentioned, the first .ai domain, right, sort of over the years, predictive AI, right, sort of hydrogen torch, which we delivered that does counting of visual things, then transformer architecture, SLMs, agentic AI, right? So you integrated the predictive, generative, and agentic AI in one AI as a service, and that runs now powered by Dell, like you call it the supercomputer, but all the GPUs that come with it, and the end-to-end systems. And I think the thing that
it's a super system, basically.
It's
a lot of computers in there.
I mean, HPC is the new PC, right? So everybody is essentially using that to just run simple things. You're coding, your IDE is connected to a HPC system today, right? So the net of that is that our customers are transforming their old stacks. So if you want to if you want to work a mainframe system, you're doing a computer user agent.
Right.
You're doing a browser user agent instead of trying, like you can also have the agent learn the APIs and write the code, but most of the times you're just using a CUA or a browser user agent and then bring the old stacks to life in today's world as well. But the biggest power punch use case we've seen, contact center, right? So we've seen customers take reams and reams of documents and start look for payment terms. If you're a large FMCG, you want to optimize cash flow with payment systems. Healthcare, we power some of the biggest healthcare systems in New York City, like Montefiore, and back there in Kaiser Permanente. They're all big customers, right? Sort of common customers. We see in about a dozen different opportunities with the governments in Middle East and Singapore.
I mean, it's one of the common things just to add to is if you look at all the examples Sri gave, it's basically enterprises which are in very, very environment where the data is very, very trusted and needs to be secure. Financials, healthcare, government, sovereign government, right? And where the data is not going anywhere, and there is a lot of smarts and intelligence you need to apply. So I think that's kind of where the power comes from, right? So it's like all the financial sector, all the sectors he talked about, they're all like, throws of data, apply smarts, and there's no other way to do this technically in public cloud, and you've got to have an on-prem AI factory story to get this money.
The biggest, you saw the MIT paper with the 95% of AI experiments not taking off. I think the 5%, if you look at the 5%, one of the cornerstone of them is they all went on, did the non-sexy, the boring stuff first, the back end, the middle office, right? Not the obvious ones.
Yeah, I poo-pooed that. You know how I feel about that survey. First of all, I wanted to see the data, and my friend at UPenn Wharton also poo-pooed it too, mainly because everyone's experimenting, so it's kind of a false narrative in the sense, because we are in the biggest experimentation stage. So
the number
question
of
is, what data don't they see? So there are production workloads. We're seeing data where people have done it right, and they're knocking down the low-hanging fruit and learning, and then they get better. So we're in this kind of progression, and I think Michael Dell brought this up here on theCUBE, and also Jensen Huang mentioned it on stage, which was the adoption is critical. That people just get adopted and going. To your point, pick something, I mean, it's a workflow, you know it end to end, you have the data sources, that's a place where you can play and implement.
The biggest ROI for our banking customers and telcos still comes from predictive AI, surprisingly. Not so surprisingly, because you actually have tabular data that's able to lend better or kind of catch fraud earlier, right? Sort of, or prevent losses, right? Sort of. But the way our customers are now beginning to see is, can I really cut down this head count, right? Sort of, so you're beginning to see that can can I run the same operation with a much smaller workforce?
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot more disruption in the traditional IT contracting because software has essentially become more of a code gen exercise.
Yeah.
As a result, you'll see some disruption there.
Well, you guys have had great success. I really appreciate you sharing. I guess my final question for both you guys, and Sri, mainly you on the front side of this, and Dell powering the solution is, what is the frame in the mind of the customer in terms of ROI? Because we're seeing the conversation shift from, hey, we can save costs, to actually revenue.
Yep.
So in the past 8 months, the narrative is, well, we can get top line and bottom line efficiencies, and people tend to go where the costs are. But actually the thinking has shifted to, wow, we did that boring workflow that causes a lot of toil and undifferentiated heavy lifting, but that's a simple task that actually has outcomes, work product, and that generated more revenue. So do you agree that that's shifted? And how are people thinking about ROI? So is it revenue generated now, or is it?
I'll go quickly. I mean, I think in Dell, we have been demonstratively doing this for the better part of a year, where we've been telling our customers that, we have demonstrated value in terms of not only, saving cost, but also driving top line revenue.
Yeah.
And every project, every AI project we do within Dell has been very clear goals of an ROI in terms of what the investments are. And we have been working on those 4 pillars inside Dell. And we have been very publicly, openly sharing a lot of these things with customers and partners, because we basically believe in Dell as customer zero. So when we actually go tell our customers that this is what we do, they are interested in say, oh, where do I start? Well, I have the same problem as you have. Maybe I start there, right? It's absolutely real.
Peer review, by the way, is something that's interesting. People are watching other peers.
Oh, totally.
All the time, and they're sharing.
And then the fact that we are all sharing, and we are doing some agent interop work in the Valley,
Yeah.
I mean, you know that, and it's like, we have all the customers, some of them are competitors,
Yeah.
a lot of competitors themselves, coming together because we all want to know what's happening in this agent world, and we all need to share.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of sharing, a lot of openness, and I think that's the beauty of this, because the tech is moving so fast. Everybody's like, what do you think? What do you think? So I think, to me, that's a great way to actually learn from others and also kind of adopt some of the best practices.
Sri, what's your take on the ROI and the revenue?
One of our customers
You think that sentiment has changed?
No, absolutely. I mean, so like in any phase of new technology adoption, the first 2 years of most of our customers is cost doesn't matter. Let's innovate, right? Let's show that it actually works. Let's adopt. It's a whole new life skill. So, like a customer like AT&T, which first went all in, go get everything done. Then they said, okay, let's optimize it. So for every dollar they invested in AI, they made like 3x returns.
Yeah.
Our banking customer like Cornell Bank, they've announced on CUBE a few quarters ago that they've cut down scams by about 70%,
Yeah.
right? Sort of dramatic improvements across the board, millions of dollars of true year-on-year optimization and better stuff. I mean, healthcare is getting better, more personalized, right? Sort of, these are 3 big ones. Public sector, this is a geopolitical level competition going on, right? Sort of the Sputnik moment, as they called it. So massive investments going in from public sector. What we're beginning to see is companies, CEOs measuring which departments have adopted how much. So 98% of one of my big banking customer has used an agent, and every week, right? Sort of, are they creating their
adoption is a key metric.
adoption, right? Sort of, and I would say, I'll leave you with we are here in stock exchange, so a good capital markets use case. One of my customers, obviously can't name, they ended up in February using our deep research to figure out which commodity to invest in, given that Trump is here and is doing all the tariffs, right? Sort of, and one beautiful thing that the deep research agent that we built did, and it was kudos to them, they asked the question, is it studied Trump's behavior from 1980 and looked at everything he's said and done,
Trump chatbot,
and measured and found what looks obvious in hindsight, that he loves gold, right? So then they bid heavily on gold, made $250 million in just a few months. So top line, also possible, but you have to now start thinking creatively and deploy capital.
that would fall under the third power law, scale law, which is thinking
Yep.
Deep thought, deep thinking.
Deep thinking.
That's where that shines.
The future,
Yeah.
there's a benchmark called Future X. We are #1 on Gaia benchmark, which is long-running business task for enterprise. But the Future X benchmark is for capital markets and quantitative traders looking for eking out alpha. And alpha used to be coding and related to hedge fund coding. Now you can actually generate these alphas and bake them off and see how they will
It's
pan
a
out.
fantastic market. It's a accelerated, it's not just a disruptive, but it's an enabler. So it's accelerated enablement.
The way I look at it, and it sees the word, I mean, right now people are saying, can I cut down headcount and transform my industry, like my company, whether it's software industry or in banks or in telcos, but where I see the future is abundance. So now 10 people can create $1 billion company, or 100 people, $1 trillion companies are going to emerge. So the vision I see for AI, and we said it before on CUBE, we see 1 million billionaires, right? So there's the 1,000 trillionaire vision and the 1 million billionaire vision, and I see that for CUBE as well.
Well, we hope to be on that one side of that. We'll hope we're on the right side. We're just doing our part to get the data out there. Sri, thank you. Satish, great to see you guys. Thanks for coming on. We went overtime as usual. John Furrier, host of our AI Factory series. The trades are making $1 trillion earlier. Now they're trading on it. AI Factory's powering everything here at the New York Stock Exchange CUBE studio. Thanks for watching.